Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Going to talk a little bit about Armed America Radio. Got the host of that program here, Mark Walters. And interesting show, interesting concept. Obviously, guns are of great interest and clearly have always been a part of America's heritage. It's not only one of those things that we enjoy for hunting purposes, but even considered one of those rights to protect us from both domestic and external enemies. And I don't think people understand that the Bill of Rights, and therefore they don't quite understand that concept. But I think that's one of the things that you're trying to educate people about over at your radio program, Armed American Radio.
It is. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. So tell us about the show.
Well, it's Armed American Radio started out as really the on-air version of Concealed Carry magazine, if you will, back 4 year ago. It's the 4th year anniversary was just this past weekend, so we're very proud of that. We got kind of thrown into the political realm. We always talk about guns and politics. Unfortunately, you can't separate the two in today's political climate and environment. I'd much rather be talking about concealed carry issues state by state and safety and training issues and some of the new regulations that pop up from time to time and teach people who have made a decision to live an armed lifestyle how to do that properly and safely. But of course, after December 14th, everything kind of exploded, and we have found ourselves at the forefront of the political debate as well.
Right, and all of a sudden we're going from a position on how to have the maximum best quality of life that includes guns and
right.
making sure that we're safe as humanly possible with them to one of almost pure locking our feet into the ground, digging our feet into the ground defensive mode rather than talking about something we've always had, one of the things that has kept us safe and free. 300 million guns among the general population is what Americans have. I think that's an extraordinary number. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of guns, but what that has done is that it sends a clear message to anyone and everyone that Americans intend to protect their freedom. And the only ones that are ever affected by these new gun laws are honest, law-abiding citizens. Criminals will never use guns legally, virtually never use guns legally. They're stolen guns. They're guns that they've gotten inappropriately to commit crimes. And so all we're doing is harming the people that we know are using them properly. It's mind-boggling to me.
It is mind-boggling because it's so logical. What you just said reeks of logic, and it's very difficult. You scratch your head and you wonder how somebody can't understand that a criminal doesn't pay attention to the very laws that they're trying to pass. Listen, the hypocrisy is never lost on me when I hear the father, Mark Barden, of the 6-year-old who was shot or 7-year-old who was shot and killed in Newtown. It is heartbreaking and as despicable and as horrifying as that is to stand up at a press conference and admit to the world that the Newtown, Connecticut shooting and his son wouldn't have been the shooting itself wouldn't have been stopped. Even with the passage of the gun laws they were calling for. You scratch your head.
So why are you doing it then? Why are you doing it?
You have to look at the bigger agenda and the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is we have to do, and here's what Obama says. If it saves just one life, he says, then it will have been worth it. Well, let me suggest to President Obama that firearms save, in the hands of good law-abiding citizens, thousands of good law-abiding, tax-paying, hard-working lives every day in this country. What about that number, Mr. President? Because you see, the logic is only being applied to their argument, their political agenda, which is firearms hatred and capitalizing on a tragedy to come after our rights as law-abiding citizens. And if anybody thinks that the political reaction that we're seeing from Newtown is a knee-jerk, instant reaction to that horrible day, they're sadly mistaken. The fact of the matter is, I've been telling people on my radio show for 4 years that a second Obama term, we would see the onslaught of the most gun-hating agenda we've ever seen in this country's history, and we were right. The fact is that Newtown was simply the catalyst that allowed them to put their already enacted or wanting to enact their political agenda into motion. Yeah. This was pre-planned, well-funded, and this is a well-coordinated attack. It's just unbelievable attack, astonishing attack we're seeing against Americans' freedoms.
Yeah, and I really want to encourage Americans to be extremely, extremely mindful that if Republicans lose a majority in the House, things are going to get incredibly bad between 2014 and 2016. He won't be facing re-election. He'll have the numbers of people that he needs in Congress to make things happen. He's already told the judicial branch, I really don't give a hoot of what you don't want us to do. We're going to do it anyway. He acts in a unilateral manner. This guy is an autocrat.
Yeah, it's really something to see. Here's what you just alluded to: what happens in 2014 if the Republicans lose the House. I'm going to take that a step farther. Now that the Senate bill failed in the U.S. Senate, the Manchin-Toomey amendment failed in the U.S. Senate, you're now starting to see the media is beginning to do what? They're quieting down a little bit right now. And understand that this administration is working, or I should say the media is working in lockstep with this administration. You're going to see the news stories begin to change. It's going to quiet down. Gun control will all of a sudden seem to wane. This is all part of their strategy leading up to 2014. Where I think they've made a mistake is that they're beginning to believe their own lies. Barack Obama is beginning to believe the lies that he is telling people because the mainstream media is continually putting those lies out. So what I'm getting at here is that these people are believing their own lies and hype, and that's going to be very dangerous for them in the 2014 election. And the reason I say that is if you can show me any election won on gun control nationwide in the last 50 years, I'll sell you a bridge over the River Kwai in Kansas. Let them run on a gun control agenda in 2014, and let's see where it gets them. Americans love their guns and their freedoms. Ask Al Gore and the residents of Tennessee. Ask John Kerry. Ask Bill Clinton. He'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah, but 90% of Americans want gun control laws.
Yeah. Well, let them continue, Kevin, to believe this lie.
Yeah. He didn't mention that all of those people were polled in the White House.
Yeah, he also did mention, let's talk about how that poll, we talk about 90% of people wanting background checks.
Right.
I host Armed American Radio. I write one to the head column for Concealed Carry magazine. I authored the book Lessons from Armed America and co-authored the second book, Lessons from Unarmed America, which will be out next May. I used a firearm to defend my life without having to fire a shot in November of 2002. I'm a certified instructor in 3 different disciplines. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this issue, and here's what I hope that these people do. I hope they believe the 90% lie, and I hope they run on it. Barack Obama said 90% of people polled are in favor of background checks. If I were to get a robotic phone call today asking me the generic question, are you in favor of background checks to keep guns out of the wrong hands, my answer to that will be yes.
Yeah. Hey, do you have any idea how many gun laws were violated in the Sandy Hook tragedy?
I don't know how many gun laws per se.
But there was, I'm not an expert, but I counted at least, but not even including the counts of murder, but I counted at least a half a dozen that guy committed.
Yeah,
so what in the world makes him think another law would change that?
Well, it wouldn't. And you will put it in perspective. He violated, I believe, 42 laws, state and federal laws combined. If anyone thinks that a 43rd law would have mattered, again, you cannot argue with dishonesty and you can't argue with stupidity. And if you try to argue with a combination of both of them, shake your head and walk away, it will fail. But to go back to the gun control 90%, I said if they interviewed me and asked me that question, of course I don't want guns in the wrong hands, and I don't mind getting the background check I get now. But if you put that question and phrase it the way Chuck Schumer's bill read, and Manchin's bill read, and Toomey bill read, and said, are you in favor of universal background checks that would require you to get a background check for any purpose whatsoever, for any sale, outlawing private sales whatsoever, including certain family, the answer to that is a resounding no.
Yeah. Mark, I got to wrap it up. Another thing is that they really need to have appropriate regulation, in fact, for any place that wants to call itself a gun-free zone, because that's an invitation to murderers, to killers, to evil people. And so they really need to, they need to have appropriate regulations. You have to have a minimal number of armed guards 24/7, plus fail-safe measures of security doors going through, or they have no business calling themselves gun-free zones, because it's an invitation to this kind of crime.
Armed cops, armed pilots, armed security guards. Boy, that's real controversial and extreme, isn't it?
Yeah, we're nut jobs. All right, Mark Walters, ArmedAmericanRadio.com. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, make sure you check him out when we come back. We're going to have more for you. I do want to remind you the best content here. It shows up over there at USDailyReview.com.